The sun had barely risen over the city skyline when Jaden Carter tightened the straps of his backpack and stepped out of his apartment. The early morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of fresh rain and the distant hum of traffic. He was used to this, the routine of waking up before most of the world, navigating the cracked sidewalks of his neighborhood, and hoping today wouldn't be the day something went wrong. His mother, Vanessa, had already left for her morning shift at the diner. She always told him to be careful, to keep his head down, to never give anyone a reason to look at him twice. But Jaden wasn't reckless. He knew how the world worked, especially for someone like him. That didn't mean he liked it. As he turned the corner, he spotted Tyler Brooks leaning against a graffiti-covered wall, tapping away on his phone. Tyler was the kind of guy who never took anything too seriously, always quick with a joke, always up for trouble if the opportunity presented itself. But despite his wild streak, he was loyal. "Damn, man. You look like you didn't sleep," Tyler smirked as Jaden approached. "Didn't," Jaden muttered. "Had to finish that history paper. Mr. Caldwell's been looking for a reason to fail me." "Like you need a reason," Tyler snorted. "Some of these teachers just don't want to see us win." Jaden shrugged. Complaining wouldn't change anything. They both knew that. They were halfway down the block when they heard it. The blaring sirens, the screech of tires, the heavy boots pounding against the pavement. The sound sent a jolt of electricity through Jaden's body. He turned just in time to see two police officers charging toward them. "Hands up! Get on the ground!" one of them barked. Confusion hit first, then fear. Jaden froze, his breath caught in his throat. Tyler took a step back, but the officer's hand shot to his holster, and that was enough to make them both obey. Jaden dropped to his knees, his palms flat against the cold concrete. "I didn't do anything," he said, his voice steady but tight. The officer ignored him. Rough hands grabbed his wrists, yanking them behind his back. The cold bite of metal snapped around them, and suddenly Jaden's world tilted sideways. His heart pounded in his ears. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. People were stopping, watching. Some took out their phones, recording. But no one stepped in. No one ever did. "What the hell is this?" Tyler shouted as another officer held him back. "You can't just—" "Robbery at Miller's Market," the officer holding Jaden sneered. "Witness put you at the scene." Miller's Market. Jaden hadn't been anywhere near that place. He'd spent the whole night at home, buried under textbooks and half-finished notes. But he didn't get the chance to explain. A police car door swung open. Jaden was shoved inside. The last thing he saw before the door slammed shut was Tyler's stunned expression and the sky overhead, slowly turning gray. The police car rattled as it sped through the streets, the flashing red and blue lights reflecting off the buildings. Jaden sat stiffly in the back seat, his wrists aching from the too tight cuffs. His heart was pounding, but he forced himself to stay calm. He hadn't done anything. They'd figure that out. They had to. The officer in the passenger seat, a stocky man with a buzz cut, glanced back at him through the metal grate. His smirk was barely concealed. "You're quiet. That's good. Means you know you're screwed." Jaden swallowed hard. "I wasn't there," he said, keeping his voice steady. "I didn't do anything." The driver, a taller officer with sharp, cold eyes, chuckled. "That's what they all say." Jaden's jaw clenched. He wanted to argue, to demand proof, but he knew better. His mother had drilled it into him. Stay respectful, stay still, don't give them a reason. He took a slow breath, staring out the window as the city blurred past. Minutes later, they pulled up in front of the precinct. The doors unlocked, and before Jaden could react, the stocky officer yanked him out. His sneakers scraped against the pavement as they dragged him toward the entrance. Inside, the station was a mix of ringing phones, clacking keyboards, and the low murmur of voices. They led him down a hallway, past rows of desks where officers barely glanced at him. Jayden caught glimpses of other people in cuffs, some angry, some scared, some looking like they'd already given up. He was shoved into a cold, windowless room. A metal table sat in the center, 2 chairs on either side. A camera in the corner blinked red. "Sit," the officer ordered, pushing him toward the chair. Jayden sat. The cuffs stayed on, the door shut, leaving him alone. The silence pressed in. His mind raced. Where was his mom? Did she know what was happening? Would she be able to help him? The door opened again. A man in a dark suit stepped inside, carrying a file. He looked down at Jayden with unreadable eyes before taking the seat across from him. He flipped open the folder, scanning the pages like he already knew what they said. Then he looked up. "Jayden Carter," he said, his voice slow and deliberate. "Let's talk about where you were last night." Jayden sat frozen, his fingers twitching against the cold metal of the cuffs. The man across from him leaned back in his chair, studying him like he was some kind of puzzle that needed solving. The dim light above flickered, casting eerie shadows on the gray walls. "My name is Detective Richard Cole," the man said, tapping the folder in front of him. "You've been identified as a suspect in the robbery at Miller's Market. Witnesses say they saw you fleeing the scene. Want to explain that?" Jayden's throat felt dry. "I wasn't there," he said, his voice steady but firm. "I was at home, studying. You can ask my mom." Cole smirked, shaking his head. "That's convenient." He flipped a page in the folder. "You fit the description. Young, black male, hoodie, sneakers. Sound familiar?" Jayden clenched his fists. "That could be anyone." Cole's smirk faded, and he leaned in. "Listen, kid, I don't have time for games. The store's security cameras caught a figure running out right after the alarm went off. You're telling me that wasn't you?" Jayden's pulse pounded. He had never even been near Miller's Market that night. But how could he prove that? His mom had left for work early, and Tyler wasn't with him the whole time. Who else could vouch for him? "I swear, I didn't do anything," he said, meeting Cole's eyes. "You got the wrong guy." Cole sighed, rubbing his temples like he'd heard this all before. Then, suddenly, he pulled out a piece of paper and slid it across the table. "Then help yourself out. Sign this statement. Say you were there, but you weren't involved in the robbery. Maybe you were just hanging out with the wrong crowd. You do that, and we can talk about cutting you a deal." Jayden stared at the paper. It was a confession, a setup. His stomach twisted. "I'm not signing that," he said firmly. Cole's eyes darkened. "You sure about that, kid? Because if you don't, this is going to get a whole lot worse for you." Jayden swallowed hard. The walls of the interrogation room felt like they were closing in. He had never been more afraid in his life. Jayden's heart pounded against his ribs as Detective Cole leaned forward, his eyes cold and calculating. The paper sat between them like a trap waiting to be sprung. Jayden knew what signing it meant. It meant giving up, admitting to something he hadn't done, sealing his own fate. His fingers twitched, itching to push the paper away, but he knew better than to make any sudden movements. "I told you," Jayden said, his voice tight. "I wasn't there. I'm not signing anything." Cole exhaled through his nose, tapping his fingers against the table. "Kid, I've been doing this for a long time. I know how this goes. You think you can fight this, but trust me. Once the system has its hands on you, it doesn't let go. He leaned in closer. I'm offering you a way out. You sign, we go easy on you. You refuse? He scoffed. Then you're looking at years behind bars. Jaden's skin prickled. He thought about his mother, how hard she worked to keep him out of trouble, how she'd told him time and time again to be careful, to never give them a reason. But this wasn't his fault. They had no proof, just their word against his. And he knew how that usually ended. The silence stretched between them. The detective's patience was wearing thin. Jaden could feel it. I want a lawyer, Jaden said finally. His voice was steady, but inside he was shaking. Cole's smirk disappeared. His jaw tightened. You think a lawyer's gonna save you? He muttered. He grabbed the paper and crumpled it in his fist. You just made the biggest mistake of your life, kid. The door swung open, and another officer stepped inside. His mother's here, the officer said, looking between them. She's demanding to see him. Jaden's chest tightened with relief. Vanessa. She wouldn't let them do this to him. Cole clicked his tongue in frustration before standing up. We'll finish this later, he muttered, shooting Jaden a glare before walking out. The moment he was alone, Jaden exhaled, his hands trembling in his lap. He had no idea what was coming next, but one thing was clear. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The heavy metal door creaked open, and Jaden's breath caught as he saw his mother step inside. Vanessa Carter was a woman who carried the weight of the world on her shoulders, but right now, her eyes burned with a fire he had never seen before. She wasn't just angry, she was furious. Behind her, a man followed, dressed in a sharp charcoal suit with an air of authority that filled the room. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and had the kind of presence that made people pay attention. His polished black shoes barely made a sound against the tile floor as he stepped forward. Jaden blinked in confusion. "Mom?" he whispered. Vanessa didn't answer right away. Instead, she turned to the officer standing in the doorway. "Uncuff my son. Now." Detective Cole, who had just re-entered the room, scoffed. "That's not how this works, ma'am. Your son is a suspect in a robbery investigation." The man in the suit stepped forward, setting his briefcase down on the table with a decisive thud. "And I am Attorney Benjamin Carter," he said coolly, his voice carrying a sharp edge. "Jaden's father." Jaden's heart nearly stopped. His father. The room fell silent. Even Cole's smug expression faltered for a second. "I want my client's handcuffs removed immediately," Benjamin continued, his voice leaving no room for argument. "And I want to know exactly what evidence you have against him." Jaden barely heard the rest of the exchange. His father, he hadn't seen the man in years. He had barely even spoken to him since he walked out on them. But now, here he was, standing between him and the nightmare that had been closing in. The officer hesitated before finally stepping forward, unlocking the cuffs. Jaden flexed his fingers, rubbing his sore wrists, but his eyes never left his father. Cole crossed his arms, regaining his composure. "We have an eyewitness," he said, "and security footage." Benjamin didn't blink. "Then you won't mind showing us that footage," he said. "Unless, of course, you're bluffing." Cole's jaw tightened. He didn't respond right away. That hesitation sent a flicker of hope through Jaden's chest. Maybe, just maybe, things were about to turn in his favor. Jaden sat frozen, his mind racing as his father squared off against Detective Cole. Benjamin Carter wasn't just any lawyer. Jaden could see it now. He carried himself with the confidence of a man who had done this 1,000 times before. who knew exactly how to tear apart flimsy accusations. But none of that changed the fact that he had barely been part of Jayden's life. Cole narrowed his eyes, crossing his arms. "You want the footage? Fine." He gestured for one of the officers to bring it up on a laptop. The tension in the room thickened as the screen flickered to life. Jayden leaned forward, his pulse hammering. The footage was grainy, taken from a security camera mounted outside Miller's Market. The timestamp showed the time of the robbery, last night just past midnight. A figure in a hoodie sprinted across the screen, disappearing down the street. "That's your son," Cole said smugly, pointing at the screen. "Witnesses saw him fleeing the scene. That's all we need." Benjamin scoffed. "All you need?" He turned the laptop slightly, peering at the screen. "This video is garbage. The quality is terrible. That could be anyone." Jayden swallowed hard. He hadn't even been outside last night. But the figure in the video did look like him. Same height, same build. He clenched his fists under the table. Benjamin wasn't done. "Let me guess," he said, voice dripping with sarcasm. "Your eyewitness is some terrified store clerk who barely got a glimpse of the suspect?" Cole's smirk faltered. "The description matches—" "Matching a description isn't proof," Benjamin cut in sharply. "Where's the clear identification? Where's the DNA evidence? The fingerprints? You have nothing." Jayden watched in awe as his father dismantled the case piece by piece. For the first time since this nightmare started, he felt the weight on his chest ease, just a little. Vanessa stepped forward, her voice shaking with fury. "You arrested my son with no real proof. Do you have any idea what could have happened to him?" Cole looked irritated now, his confidence cracking. "We were following procedure." "Your procedure almost ruined an innocent kid's life," Benjamin snapped. He turned to Jayden. "We're leaving. Now." Jayden exhaled shakily as he stood. For the first time in hours, he felt like he could breathe again. The air outside the police station was thick with tension. Jayden stepped onto the pavement, the cool night breeze hitting his face like a splash of cold water. He inhaled deeply, as if trying to cleanse himself of the stench of that interrogation room. His wrists still ached from the cuffs, and his mind buzzed with everything that had just happened. Vanessa walked beside him, her jaw tight, her hands clenched into fists. She hadn't said a word since they left. Benjamin, however, strode ahead confidently, his phone already in his hand, typing something with the ease of a man who had just won another case. Jayden glanced at his mother, expecting her to say something, anything. But when she finally spoke, her voice was sharp. "Get in the car." He hesitated for half a second before obeying, sliding into the back seat of her aging sedan. Vanessa got behind the wheel, gripping it so tightly her knuckles turned white. Benjamin took the passenger seat like he had every right to be there, despite having been absent for so long. The silence stretched as Vanessa started the engine and pulled away from the curb. Jayden watched the city lights blur past the window, his mind still struggling to process the fact that he was free. He should have felt relieved. Instead, his stomach twisted into knots. Then, finally, Vanessa spoke again, her voice filled with uncontained fury. "Where the hell have you been, Benjamin?" Jayden stiffened. He knew this was coming. Benjamin sighed, adjusting his cufflinks like this wasn't the first time he'd faced this conversation. "Vanessa, this isn't the time." "No," she snapped, slamming the brakes at a red light. "You don't get to walk in after all these years and act like a hero. Where were you when Jayden needed a father? When I needed help raising him?" Jayden stared at his lap, his throat tightening. He had asked himself those same questions a million times. Benjamin sighed again, but this time, his voice softened. I never stopped caring, Vanessa. He trailed off, then exhaled. I made mistakes. Vanessa let out a bitter laugh. Mistakes? That's what you call abandoning your son? Jayden squeezed his eyes shut. The weight of their words crashed over him. This wasn't over. Not even close. The drive home felt like it lasted forever. Tension filled the car, thick and suffocating. Jayden kept his gaze locked on the window, watching the streetlights blur past. But he couldn't tune out the argument unfolding in the front seats. You don't get to show up after all this time and pretend like you care, Vanessa hissed, gripping the wheel so tightly Jayden thought she might snap it in half. I do care, Benjamin said, his voice calm but firm. That's why I came. Vanessa let out a bitter laugh. Oh, really? You just happened to hear our son got arrested and decided to swoop in? Where were you when I was working double shifts to keep a roof over his head? Where were you when he needed a father to teach him how to navigate a world that already sees him as guilty before innocent? Jayden clenched his jaw. He hated this. Hated feeling like he was the reason for this explosion. Benjamin exhaled. I made mistakes, Vanessa. I know that. But I never stopped thinking about him. Jayden finally snapped. Then why didn't you ever call? His voice was sharper than he expected, anger bubbling up from years of silence. Why did you just disappear? Benjamin turned slightly, his face shadowed in the dim streetlights. Because I thought it was best. Jayden scoffed. Best for who? You? Vanessa's grip on the wheel tightened, but she said nothing. Benjamin hesitated before answering. I was young. I was stupid. I thought I could build something better for myself, and then come back when I was ready. But time got away from me. And by the time I realized how much I had lost, I didn't know how to fix it. Jayden shook his head. You don't just get to walk back into my life and act like everything's fine. I don't expect you to forgive me overnight, Benjamin said quietly. But I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere. The car pulled into their apartment complex, the headlights cutting through the darkness. Vanessa turned off the engine but didn't move. Neither did Jayden. For the first time in his life, his father was here. But that didn't mean he could trust him. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Jayden stepped out of the car, his body still tense from everything that had happened. The cool night air did little to calm him. The apartment complex loomed ahead, familiar yet somehow different now that his father was walking beside him. The man who had been nothing more than a shadow in his life was suddenly real, present, and acting like he belonged. Vanessa unlocked the front door and pushed it open. Go inside, Jayden, she said, her voice tired but still laced with frustration. Jayden hesitated. He wanted to stay, to hear whatever argument was about to happen next, but the exhaustion weighing down on him was too much. Without another word, he walked inside, heading straight for his room. He shut the door, locking out the world, but not the thoughts racing in his head. He collapsed onto his bed, staring at the ceiling. Just hours ago, he was sitting in an interrogation room, wondering if his life was about to be ruined. Now he was home, safe. But nothing about this felt right. His dad was here, but so what? Did that change anything? Could it? Muffled voices drifted through the walls. His mom and Benjamin were still talking or arguing. He couldn't make out every word, but he caught enough. Think you can just walk back in? Not trying to take over, Vanessa, but I have a right. Geez, he doesn't even know you. Jayden squeezed his eyes shut. He didn't want to hear this. Not now. A knock on his door made him flinch. He knew who it was before he even answered. "Jayden?" His father's voice was hesitant. "Can I come in?" Jayden exhaled sharply before pushing himself up. He considered saying no, making Benjamin wait outside like he had waited all these years. But instead, he stood and opened the door. Benjamin studied him for a moment before stepping inside. "I know this is a lot," he said carefully, "and I don't expect you to trust me right away. But I want to try, if you'll let me." Jayden crossed his arms. "And what happens when you get tired of trying?" Benjamin didn't flinch. "I won't." Jayden wanted to believe him. He really did. But belief was dangerous. And trust? That was even worse. Jayden sat on the edge of his bed, his arms crossed tightly over his chest as he stared at the man who had once been just a name on a birth certificate. Benjamin Carter, his father. A stranger who suddenly wanted to be part of his life. Benjamin exhaled and ran a hand over his neatly trimmed beard. "Look, I know you don't owe me anything. I wasn't here. I should have been. But I can't change the past, Jayden. All I can do is be here now." Jayden scoffed. "Be here now. That's easy to say. But what about before? What about all the birthdays you missed? The times Mom worked double shifts and I had to figure things out on my own? Where were you then?" Benjamin's jaw tightened. "I was a coward," he admitted. "I made choices that I thought were best at the time, but they weren't. And I know that no apology can undo any of it." He leaned forward slightly. "But you don't have to forgive me today, or tomorrow. All I'm asking for is a chance." Jayden studied him, searching for cracks in his words. It was strange. The man in front of him wasn't defensive, wasn't making excuses. He wasn't even asking to be forgiven, just to be heard. That was new. The air in the room felt heavy. Jayden wanted to tell him to leave, to go back to wherever he had been all these years. But something in his chest held him back. Benjamin stood up. "I'm staying in town for a while," he said. "I'll be at the Hilton downtown. If you ever want to talk or—" He hesitated. "Or if you need anything, you can call me." Jayden didn't respond. He wasn't sure he even could. Benjamin took the silence for what it was and nodded. "Good night, Jayden." Then, without pushing any further, he turned and walked out. Jayden sat there long after the door shut, his thoughts tangled in ways he couldn't untangle. He should have felt relieved that his father was leaving, but instead, all he felt was uncertainty. He didn't know if he could trust Benjamin, but for the first time, he wasn't entirely sure if he wanted to shut him out either. Sleep didn't come easy that night. Jayden lay awake, staring at the ceiling, his mind tangled in thoughts he couldn't escape. His father's voice echoed in his head, over and over again. "All I'm asking for is a chance." But what did that even mean? A chance to do what? Pretend the past never happened? Fix something that had already been broken beyond repair? By the time the first rays of sunlight crept through his blinds, Jayden had barely slept. He forced himself out of bed, dragging his feet toward the bathroom. The face staring back at him in the mirror looked just as exhausted as he felt. Dark circles under his eyes, tension still carved into his jaw. From the kitchen, the clatter of dishes and the smell of coffee filled the apartment. His mother was already up. Jayden sighed, knowing there was no avoiding the conversation that was coming. When he stepped into the kitchen, Vanessa barely glanced up from the counter where she was pouring herself a cup of coffee. "You sleep at all?" she asked, her voice flat. Jayden pulled out a chair and sank into it. "Not really." Vanessa took a long sip of her coffee before setting the mug down with a quiet thunk. I don't trust him. Jayden exhaled. Yeah, I figured. She finally looked at him, her expression unreadable. Do you? Jayden hesitated. That was the million-dollar question, wasn't it? Did he trust Benjamin? Number not yet, maybe not ever. But there was something about the way his father had spoken to him last night. Something real, something that didn't feel like an act. I don't know, Jayden admitted. Vanessa's jaw tightened. He's good with words, Jayden. That's what he does for a living. But words don't change what he did. Jayden ran a hand through his hair. I get that, Mom. I do. But what if... He stopped himself before finishing the thought. What if he really is trying? Vanessa sighed, rubbing her temple. Just don't get your hopes up. Jayden didn't say anything, but deep down he knew the truth. His hopes were already higher than they should have been. Jayden spent most of the day trying to push his thoughts about Benjamin aside, but it was impossible. No matter what he did, scrolling through his phone, playing video games, even attempting to do some homework, his mind kept circling back to the same thing. His father was in town. His father wanted to be part of his life. But did Jayden want that? By the time evening rolled around, he couldn't take it anymore. He grabbed his jacket, shoved his phone into his pocket, and stepped out of the apartment. He didn't tell Vanessa where he was going. He wasn't even sure himself. He just needed air, space to think. The streets were quieter than usual. The streetlights buzzed faintly as they flickered on, casting long shadows on the sidewalk. Jayden stuffed his hands into his pockets, his breath visible in the cool night air. His feet carried him forward on autopilot, and before he realized it, he was standing in front of a building he never expected to visit. The Hilton Hotel. Jayden stared at the glass entrance doors, his heart pounding. He could turn around, go home, pretend he never came. But his feet stayed planted. With a deep breath, he walked inside. The lobby was sleek and modern, with polished marble floors and soft jazz playing in the background. Jayden felt out of place instantly. He approached the front desk, clearing his throat. I'm looking for Benjamin Carter. He's staying here. The receptionist glanced at her computer before nodding. Room 713. Would you like me to call up? Jayden shook his head. Number, I'll just... He hesitated. What was he doing? Did he really want to see his father? Before he could change his mind, he made his way to the elevator, pressing the button for the 7th floor. The ride up felt like an eternity, his stomach twisting with uncertainty. When the doors finally slid open, he stepped out, walking down the carpeted hallway until he reached room 713. He stood there, staring at the door, his heart hammering. Then, before he could overthink it, he raised his fist and knocked. A few seconds passed. Then the door swung open. Benjamin's eyes widened in surprise. Jayden? Jayden swallowed hard. Can we talk? Benjamin stepped aside without hesitation, gesturing for Jayden to come in. The hotel room was sleek and modern, much like the lobby. Neatly made bed, a desk against the wall, and a large window overlooking the city. It was the kind of place that screamed temporary, just like Benjamin's presence in Jayden's life had always been. Jayden walked in slowly, feeling out of place. He didn't sit down, didn't make himself comfortable. He wasn't here to stay. Benjamin shut the door behind him and turned to face his son. I wasn't expecting you. Jayden crossed his arms. Yeah, well, I wasn't expecting to be here. A pause stretched between them, thick and heavy. Benjamin leaned against the desk, watching him carefully. So, What made you come? Jaden let out a sharp breath. I don't know. That was the truth. He hadn't planned this, hadn't even wanted to come. But here he was, standing in front of the man he had spent years resenting. Benjamin nodded, as if he understood. That's fair. Another silence. Jaden shifted uncomfortably, his fingers tightening around the sleeves of his hoodie. He wasn't sure how to start this conversation, if there even was a conversation to have. Finally, Benjamin spoke. I know this isn't easy for you, and I don't expect you to just— He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. To trust me overnight. Jaden scoffed. Trust? That's a big word for someone who left. Benjamin sighed, rubbing his hands together. I deserve that. Jaden looked at him, really looked at him. His father wasn't defensive. He wasn't making excuses. He just stood there taking it. That made Jaden even angrier, because it meant Benjamin knew how badly he had messed up. I don't even know why I'm here, Jaden muttered, shaking his head. Maybe you do, Benjamin said softly. Jaden clenched his jaw. He hated that Benjamin might be right. A knock on the door broke the moment. Benjamin frowned and walked over, opening it slightly. Jaden caught a glimpse of a well-dressed man in a suit, handing Benjamin an envelope. Everything's in order, sir, the man said. Benjamin nodded. Thanks. Jaden narrowed his eyes. What was that? Benjamin hesitated before shutting the door. Just something I needed to take care of. Jaden didn't believe him, not for a second. Jaden's eyes stayed locked on the envelope in Benjamin's hands. Something about it felt off. Maybe it was the way Benjamin's fingers tightened around it, or how his jaw tensed like he didn't want to explain. What do you mean? Something you needed to take care of? Jaden asked, his tone sharp. Benjamin sighed, setting the envelope down on the desk. It's business. Nothing for you to worry about. Jaden scoffed. Right, because that's what you do best, huh? Keep secrets, disappear, show up when it's convenient. Benjamin met his gaze, his expression unreadable. That's not what this is. Jaden folded his arms. Then tell me what it is. Benjamin hesitated, then picked up the envelope and turned it in his hands. Finally, he opened it and pulled out a set of documents. He held them up for Jaden to see. It's legal paperwork. Jaden frowned. For what? Benjamin inhaled deeply before answering. To fight for visitation rights. Jaden's stomach dropped. You're taking Mom to court? No, Benjamin said quickly. At least not yet. But I need to make it official. I want to be in your life, Jaden. Not just now, but permanently. Jaden's mind spun. He had spent years hating Benjamin for leaving, and now that he was back, he was trying to force his way in. You think some legal papers are going to fix things? He asked, voice rising. Benjamin remained calm. Number, but it means I won't disappear again, no matter what happens. Jaden wanted to be angry. He wanted to tell Benjamin to get out of his life and stay out. But instead, all he felt was confusion. This wasn't what he expected. Not at all. He took a step back. I need to go. Jaden, no. Jaden shook his head. You don't get to drop this on me and expect me to just be okay with it. Benjamin didn't try to stop him. He simply nodded. I understand. Jaden turned and left, his heart pounding as he made his way back to the elevator. As the doors closed behind him, he exhaled sharply, trying to steady himself. His father wasn't just back. He was staying. And Jaden wasn't sure if that made things better or worse. Jaden walked the city streets, his hands shoved deep into his hoodie pockets, his mind racing with everything Benjamin had said. Visitation rights? Legal paperwork? This wasn't some casual visit. His father was making moves, real ones, ones that could change everything. The idea of it made Jaden's stomach twist. He had spent so many years believing Benjamin didn't care, that he was just another deadbeat who had moved on without looking back. Now, he was proving Jaden wrong in the worst way possible. By staying, by trying, by forcing himself into Jaden's life whether he wanted it or not. By the time he reached his apartment, his chest was tight with frustration. He stepped inside, shutting the door a little harder than necessary. Vanessa looked up from the couch, her phone in her hand, her expression instantly turning suspicious. "Where were you?" she asked. Jaden hesitated for half a second before answering. "With him." Vanessa's face darkened. "Jaden." "He's filing for visitation," Jaden cut in. He didn't want to dance around it. He needed to see her reaction, needed to know if she already knew. Vanessa stiffened, her jaw tightening. "I figured he might." Jaden's brows furrowed. "You figured. You knew this was coming." Vanessa exhaled, rubbing her temple. "I didn't know, but I wasn't naive enough to think he'd just disappear again. Not after the way he came back." Jaden shook his head, pacing the small living room. "So what? You're just gonna fight him? Try to keep him out of my life?" Vanessa stood, her gaze sharp. "I have never kept him from you, Jaden. He stayed away all on his own." Jaden clenched his fists. He wanted to believe that. He did. But everything felt like it was spinning out of his control. "What if I don't want him around?" he asked, his voice quieter now. Vanessa's expression softened. She stepped closer, resting a hand on his arm. "Then that's your choice," she said gently. "But you need to figure out what you want, Jaden. Not what I want. Not what he wants." Jaden swallowed hard. He didn't have an answer. Not yet. But one thing was clear. This wasn't going away. His father was here to stay. And for the first time, Jaden wasn't sure if he hated that or not. Jaden lay awake long after Vanessa had gone to bed, staring at the ceiling, his thoughts running in endless circles. No matter how hard he tried to block it out, Benjamin's words kept replaying in his head. "I want to be in your life, no matter what happens." It should have made things simple. He should have been furious, ready to shut his father out completely, but instead all he felt was confusion. At some point, exhaustion took over, and he drifted into a restless sleep. When he woke up the next morning, his phone buzzed with a notification, a message from an unknown number. "Benjamin Carter. I know last night was a lot. I won't push, but if you ever want to talk, I'll be at the diner on 5th around noon. No pressure." Jaden stared at the screen, debating whether to ignore it. He didn't owe Benjamin anything, but something inside him itched at the thought of leaving things unfinished. By the time noon rolled around, he found himself walking toward the diner, his hands stuffed in his pockets. It wasn't until he was standing outside the glass doors, staring in at Benjamin sitting alone in a booth, that he realized how ridiculous this was. He could turn around, walk away. Instead, he took a breath and stepped inside. Benjamin looked up as Jaden approached, setting down his coffee. "Didn't think you'd come." Jaden slid into the seat across from him. "Yeah, me neither." A waitress walked by and Jaden quickly ordered a soda. Benjamin waited until she left before speaking. "I meant what I said last night. This isn't just about legal rights. It's about making things right." Jaden scoffed. "You think signing a few papers makes up for years of nothing?" "No," Benjamin admitted. "But it's a start." Jaden studied him, There was no arrogance in his tone, no false promises, just honesty. And maybe that was what scared Jayden the most. The waitress returned, placing his soda on the table. Jayden picked it up, swirling the ice before taking a sip. He didn't know where this was going, but for some reason, he wasn't walking away yet. Jayden tapped his fingers against the cold glass of his soda, his mind a battlefield of emotions. Benjamin sat across from him, calm, patient, like he wasn't expecting anything from Jayden except for him to be here. And that, somehow, was even more frustrating. "So," Jayden muttered, breaking the silence. "Why now?" Benjamin leaned forward slightly. "Because I finally realized that waiting for the right moment was just another excuse. I've made mistakes, Jayden, big ones, but if I keep standing on the sidelines, I'll never get the chance to fix them." Jayden scoffed. "And you think you can just fix this, like it's that easy?" "No," Benjamin admitted. "I don't, but I'm willing to try." Jayden clenched his jaw, looking away. He hated how sincere Benjamin sounded, hated that it wasn't as simple as just shutting him out. Benjamin sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I know you don't trust me. I don't blame you. But I need you to understand something. I never stopped thinking about you. Not for a single day." Jayden let out a bitter laugh. "That's funny. 'Cause it sure felt like you did." Benjamin's face tightened, but he didn't argue. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an old, worn-out envelope. He placed it on the table, sliding it toward Jayden. "What's this?" Jayden asked, eyeing it warily. "Letters," Benjamin said simply. "Ones I wrote to you over the years. I never sent them. I didn't think I had the right. But I want you to have them now." Jayden stared at the envelope, hesitant. Part of him wanted to shove it back at Benjamin, tell him it was too late for this. But another part of him, the part that still wondered, still hurt, itched to see what was inside. He grabbed the envelope and shoved it into his pocket, not ready to open it yet. "This doesn't change anything," he said, his voice tight. Benjamin nodded. "I know." Jayden finished his soda in silence. When he finally stood up to leave, Benjamin didn't stop him. He just watched him go, as if he knew this was Jayden's choice to make. And for the first time, Jayden wasn't sure what that choice was going to be. Jayden walked home with the envelope burning a hole in his pocket. He didn't understand why he had taken it. He should have left it on the table, walked away without another word. But now, it was his problem. Those unsent letters. Those words Benjamin had apparently been holding on to for years. By the time he reached the apartment, he was exhausted. He stepped inside quietly, hoping to avoid any conversation. But Vanessa was already in the kitchen, sipping coffee. She took one look at his face and knew. "You saw him again," she said. It wasn't a question. Jayden sighed, dropping onto the couch. "Yeah." Vanessa set her mug down and leaned against the counter. "And?" Jayden hesitated, then pulled the envelope from his pocket and tossed it onto the coffee table. "He gave me these. Letters he wrote but never sent." Vanessa's eyes flickered to the envelope before meeting his gaze. "Are you going to read them?" Jayden stared at it, his jaw tightening. "I don't know." Vanessa crossed her arms, studying him. "You don't have to, you know. You don't owe him that." "I know," Jayden muttered. But that wasn't the problem. The problem was that some part of him wanted to read them, and he hated himself for it. Vanessa sighed, walking over and sitting beside him. "I'm not going to tell you what to do, Jay. But if you do read them, do it for yourself, not for him." Jayden nodded but didn't say anything. That night, long after Vanessa had gone to bed, he sat in his room with the envelope in his hands. His fingers hovered over the flap, his heart pounding. Finally, he ripped it open. The first letter was dated almost 10 years ago. The handwriting was neat but uncertain, like Benjamin wasn't sure how to start. Jayden, I don't know if you'll ever read this, but I need to write it anyway. Jayden swallowed hard, his eyes moving over the words, his chest tightening with every sentence. By the time he reached the end of the first letter, his vision was blurred, his emotions a tangled mess. And yet, he reached for the next one. Jayden sat on the edge of his bed, the letters spread out in front of him like pieces of a puzzle he never wanted to solve. Each one was a glimpse into a past he thought had been abandoned, a past that, despite everything, Benjamin had never fully let go of. The second letter was dated 8 years ago. Jayden, I wish I had the courage to send this to you. I think about you every day. I wonder how tall you've gotten, what your favorite food is now, if you still make that scrunched up face when you're annoyed. Jayden smirked slightly at that. He did still do that. I don't know if you hate me. You probably do, and I wouldn't blame you. I just hope that one day you'll understand that I left because I thought it was best for you. But now, I'm starting to think I was just a coward. Jayden exhaled slowly. A coward. That was exactly how he had always seen Benjamin. Someone who ran away. Someone who gave up. But these letters, this version of his father, wasn't the arrogant, distant man he had built up in his mind. This Benjamin was broken, regretful. The third letter, dated 6 years ago, was smudged, like the ink had been blurred by water. Jayden hesitated before reading it. Jayden, I heard you made the basketball team. I wish I could have been there to see it. Your mom doesn't know I check in sometimes, but I do. I see pictures when I can. You look happy. I hope you are. Jayden's grip on the letter tightened. His mother had never mentioned anything about Benjamin checking in. Had she known? Or had Benjamin stayed in the shadows, never daring to reach out? He read letter after letter, each one another layer of the father he had tried so hard to forget. And by the time he reached the last one, written only a year ago, his heart felt too heavy in his chest. Jayden, I'm done running. If I ever get the chance, I'll tell you everything, if you'll let me. Jayden set the letter down, his hands shaking. He had spent years believing his father had erased him from his life. But maybe, just maybe, Benjamin had been trying all along. Jayden didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the letters playing over and over in his mind. He had spent years convincing himself that Benjamin had never cared, that he had walked away and never looked back. But the ink on those pages told a different story. By morning, exhaustion weighed heavy on him, but his mind was sharper than ever. He needed answers. He needed to know why Benjamin had written those letters, but never sent them. And for the first time, he realized he wanted to hear the truth, no matter how much it hurt. Vanessa was already up when he walked into the kitchen, sipping her coffee. She glanced at him and immediately frowned. You look like you've been up all night. Jayden grabbed a glass of water and downed it in one gulp. I was. He hesitated before adding, I read them. Vanessa set her mug down carefully. And? Jayden rubbed his temple. I don't know. They don't change what happened. But they weren't what I expected. Vanessa studied him for a long moment before nodding. So what now? Jayden exhaled, already knowing the answer. I need to see him. Vanessa didn't argue. She just gave him a small nod. Okay. A few hours later, Jaden stood outside Benjamin's office building, his heart pounding. He hadn't texted, hadn't called. He just showed up, unsure of what he would even say when he saw his father. The receptionist eyed him curiously when he walked in. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to see Benjamin Carter," Jaden said, his voice steady. The woman's eyes flickered with recognition. "He's in a meeting right now, but I can—" "Jaden?" Jaden turned at the sound of Benjamin's voice. His father stood in the hallway looking surprised, but not unhappy. Jaden took a breath. "We need to talk." Benjamin nodded without hesitation. "Of course, let's go somewhere private." As Jaden followed his father down the hall, he knew one thing for sure. This conversation was going to change everything. Benjamin led Jaden into a quiet office, closing the door behind them. The room was sleek and modern, but Jaden barely noticed. His heart was pounding too loudly in his ears, his thoughts tangled. He had spent years waiting for this moment. So why did he suddenly feel like he had no idea what to say? Benjamin gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Sit, if you want." Jaden stayed standing. "Why didn't you send them?" The question came out sharper than he intended, but he didn't care. He needed to know. Benjamin sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Because I didn't think I had the right to. I thought if I stayed away, I was doing you a favor." Jaden clenched his fists. "A favor? You really think disappearing was what was best for me?" Benjamin's jaw tightened. "At the time, yes." Jaden let out a bitter laugh. "Wow, that's a new one." "I was a mess, Jaden," Benjamin admitted, his voice raw. "When I left, I wasn't the man you needed me to be. I thought if I stayed, I'd only make things worse. And when I finally realized how wrong I was, I didn't know how to come back." Jaden shook his head. "So you just wrote letters instead? That was your big solution?" Benjamin's gaze was steady. "It was the only way I could talk to you when I was too much of a coward to do it in person." Silence stretched between them. Jaden wanted to scream, to curse him out, to tell him that a stack of old letters didn't make up for missing birthdays. For the nights he had cried himself to sleep, wondering why his father didn't want him. But at the same time, he couldn't ignore the weight in Benjamin's voice. The regret, the pain. It wasn't fake. Jaden swallowed hard. "I don't know if I can forgive you." Benjamin nodded. "I wouldn't expect you to." Jaden hesitated. "But I don't want to hate you either." Benjamin's breath hitched just slightly. "Then let me prove to you that I'm not the man I was. Let me try." Jaden didn't say yes, but for the first time, he didn't say no either. Jaden left the office feeling heavier than when he had walked in. His hands were stuffed in his pockets, his head down as he made his way through the bustling city streets. He had gotten his answers, at least some of them, but they didn't make things easier. If anything, they only left him with more questions. Was it possible to let Benjamin back into his life? Could he ever look at him without the resentment that had been building inside him for years? He wasn't sure. His phone buzzed in his pocket, snapping him out of his thoughts. He pulled it out and saw a text from Vanessa. "Vanessa, hey, how did it go?" Jaden sighed, hesitating before typing back. "Jaden, I don't know yet." He didn't expect an immediate reply, but his phone buzzed again. "Vanessa, come home. I made pasta." A small smile tugged at the corner of his lips. She knew exactly how to get him to stop overthinking. Food. By the time he got back to the apartment, the smell of garlic and tomato sauce filled the air. Vanessa was already at the table, twirling spaghetti around her fork. She looked up when he walked in. "Hey," she said, setting her fork down. So are we talking about it, or are we pretending it didn't happen? Jaden let out a dry chuckle sitting across from her. I don't even know where to start. Vanessa poured him a glass of water. Start with how you feel. Jaden exhaled. I'm pissed, confused. Part of me still wants to shut him out completely. But then, I think about those letters, and the way he looked at me today, and He paused, rubbing his face. I don't know, V. What if he actually means it this time? Vanessa studied him carefully. Then maybe you give him the chance to prove it. Jaden played with the edge of his napkin. And what if he disappoints me again? Vanessa reached across the table, squeezing his hand. Then you'll survive it, because you're not that little kid waiting for him to come back anymore. Jaden swallowed hard. He didn't know if he was ready to let Benjamin in, but maybe, just maybe, he was ready to try. Jaden woke up the next morning feeling restless. He had spent half the night tossing and turning, his mind replaying every word Benjamin had said. No matter how much he tried to push it away, it stayed with him, gnawing at the walls he had built over the years. By noon, he found himself at the basketball court near his apartment, dribbling a ball absent-mindedly. The rhythmic thud, thud, thud against the pavement was the only thing keeping his thoughts from spiraling. He aimed for a shot, the ball arcing perfectly before swishing through the net. Still got it, a voice called from behind him. Jaden turned sharply, his heart lurching. Benjamin stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, watching him with a small, almost uncertain smile. Jaden clenched his jaw. How'd you find me? Benjamin shrugged. Your mom used to mention this place. Said you'd always come here when you needed to think. Jaden huffed. Of course. His mother had always known him too well. Benjamin took a cautious step forward. Mind if I join you? Jaden hesitated before tossing the ball to him. Try to keep up, old man. Benjamin caught the ball with a chuckle. You're about to regret that. For the next few minutes they played. No talking, no tension, just the game. Benjamin was surprisingly good, his movements fluid, his shots precise. Jaden wanted to be annoyed, but instead he found himself enjoying it. When they finally stopped, both panting slightly, Benjamin wiped sweat from his brow. Still think I'm too old for this? Jaden smirked. You got lucky. Benjamin leaned against the fence. I missed this. Just being with you. Jaden looked away, gripping the ball tighter. You gave that up. I did, Benjamin admitted. And it's my biggest regret. Silence stretched between them. Jaden could feel Benjamin watching him, waiting for some kind of reaction. Finally, he exhaled. I don't know if I can ever trust you again. Benjamin nodded. I understand. Jaden bounced the ball once. But I guess I don't hate you. Benjamin's breath hitched slightly. That's more than I deserve. Jaden tossed the ball back to him. 1-on-1. If you win, maybe I'll consider giving you a chance. Benjamin grinned. You're on. And for the first time in years, Jaden felt something shift. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't impossible after all. Jaden wasn't sure what he expected after that game with Benjamin. Maybe he thought it would be easier now, that things would just fall into place. But the truth was, trust wasn't something that came overnight. It was built, slowly, and Jaden wasn't sure if he was ready to start. Still, he didn't shut Benjamin out completely. Over the next few days, they exchanged short texts, nothing deep, nothing emotional, just simple things. Benjamin, saw the Lakers game last night? Jaden, yeah, terrible defense in the third quarter. Benjamin, Agreed. You still playing for fun? Jayden. Sometimes. It wasn't much, but it was something. One evening, Vanessa found Jayden sitting on the couch, staring at his phone like it held all the answers to the universe. She leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. You gonna keep texting back and forth forever? Or are you actually gonna talk to him? Jayden sighed. I don't know what to say. Vanessa plopped onto the couch beside him. Maybe you don't have to say much. Maybe just spend time with him. Jayden thought about that. A few minutes later, he typed out a message before he could talk himself out of it. Jayden, you free tomorrow? The reply came almost immediately. Benjamin, yeah, what's up? Jayden, meet me at the coffee shop on 5th at noon. Benjamin's response was short. Benjamin, I'll be there. The next day, Jayden arrived early. He sat at a table near the window, watching cars pass by, his knee bouncing under the table. He was nervous, though he wouldn't admit it. When Benjamin walked in, Jayden was struck by how different he looked in the daylight. Less intimidating, more human. He hesitated for a second before sitting across from Jayden. Didn't think you'd actually show up, Jayden said, stirring his coffee. Benjamin smiled slightly. I told you, Jayden. I'm done running. Jayden met his father's gaze, searching for any sign of hesitation, any crack in his words. He didn't find one. Maybe Vanessa was right. Maybe it was time to stop waiting for the perfect words and just try. Jayden wasn't sure why he had asked Benjamin to meet him. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was exhaustion from carrying years of resentment. Either way, as he sat across from his father in the small coffee shop, he felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Benjamin glanced at the menu but didn't order anything. You still drink your coffee black? Jayden raised an eyebrow. You remember that? Benjamin gave a small smile. I remember a lot of things. Jayden wasn't sure how to respond to that, so he just sipped his coffee. The silence between them stretched, thick and uncomfortable, but Benjamin didn't push. He just sat there waiting. Finally, Jayden exhaled. So what now? Benjamin leaned back. That's up to you. Jayden scoffed. That's not an answer. Benjamin nodded. You're right. I guess I want to show you I'm serious, that I'm not just here for a few weeks before disappearing again. Jayden studied him carefully. And how do I know that's true? Benjamin met his gaze. You don't, but I'm willing to prove it, if you'll let me. Jayden tapped his fingers against the table, his thoughts a mess. He had spent so long convincing himself that Benjamin didn't care, that he would never come back. But here he was, sitting across from him, saying all the right things. And for the first time, Jayden wasn't sure if he wanted to push him away. After a moment, he sighed. All right, let's see if you're serious. Benjamin's expression softened. I'd like that. Jayden nodded toward the counter. Then start by buying me another coffee. Benjamin laughed, standing up. That I can do. As he walked away, Jayden watched him closely, his guard still up, but maybe, just maybe, a little less than before. Jayden never thought rebuilding a relationship with his father would feel so awkward. After their coffee shop meeting, things didn't magically fall into place. There was no grand moment of healing, no instant father-son bond. It was slow, hesitant, and filled with moments of doubt. They started meeting once a week, usually for coffee or lunch. The conversations were never deep, mostly surface-level stuff. Sports, work, random things happening in the city. Benjamin never pushed, never asked for more than Jayden was willing to give. And somehow, that made it easier. One afternoon, Jaden found himself sitting across from Benjamin at a diner, stirring his soda with his straw. "So, what exactly do you do now?" he asked, glancing up. Benjamin looked a little surprised by the question, but he answered, "I run a consulting firm, mostly business strategy, helping companies grow." Jaden smirked. "Sounds boring." Benjamin chuckled. "It can be, but it keeps me busy." Jaden nodded, taking a sip of his drink. "You ever think about moving back here?" Benjamin hesitated. "I have, but I don't want to rush things. I don't want to disrupt your life." Jaden let out a small laugh, shaking his head. "You think showing up out of nowhere wasn't already disruptive?" Benjamin sighed. "Fair point." Silence settled between them again. Jaden wasn't sure why he had asked about Benjamin moving back. The idea of having him around more often was still strange. But a small part of him, one he barely admitted to himself, didn't hate it. Benjamin leaned forward slightly. "Look, Jaden, I know this isn't easy. I know I don't deserve a second chance. But I just want to be here. However you'll let me." Jaden studied his father's face, searching for any hint of insincerity. He didn't find one. He exhaled, leaning back. "All right. We'll see how it goes." Benjamin's lips twitched into a hopeful smile. "That's all I can ask for." And just like that, another wall between them cracked, just a little. Jaden didn't tell Vanessa about his meetings with Benjamin right away. He wasn't sure why. Maybe he was afraid saying it out loud would make it real. Or maybe he didn't want to admit that part of him was starting to let his father in. But Vanessa wasn't stupid. One evening, as they sat on the couch watching a movie, she casually tossed a piece of popcorn at him. "So, when were you planning to tell me?" Jaden caught the popcorn, raising an eyebrow. "Tell you what?" Vanessa gave him a knowing look. "That you've been meeting up with your dad." Jaden sighed, sinking deeper into the cushions. "Who told you?" Vanessa smirked. "You did. You've been quieter lately, less angry. And let's be real, I saw the text messages on your phone." Jaden groaned. "Seriously?" Vanessa shrugged. "Hey, your screen lit up while you were in the kitchen. It's not my fault you don't have a lock." Jaden rolled his eyes but didn't argue. Instead, he exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know, V. It's weird. I don't fully trust him, but I don't completely hate being around him either." Vanessa nodded. "That makes sense. It's okay to be unsure." Jaden glanced at her. "And if this whole thing blows up in my face?" Vanessa reached over, squeezing his hand. "Then you'll deal with it, and I'll be here." Jaden let her words settle in, comforted by their simplicity. He didn't have to have all the answers right now. The next morning, he found himself texting Benjamin again. "Jaden, you free this weekend?" Benjamin, "Yeah, what's up?" Jaden hesitated before typing his next message. "Jaden, want to come by my place?" There was a long pause before Benjamin responded. "Benjamin, I'd love that." As soon as Jaden sent the message, he felt a knot of anxiety twist in his stomach. This was another step forward, one that scared him. But maybe, just maybe, it was time to stop looking back. Jaden spent the entire morning overthinking. Inviting Benjamin over felt like crossing some invisible line he wasn't sure he was ready to cross. His apartment wasn't anything special, a small but comfortable space he had made his own. It wasn't like he needed to impress Benjamin, but still, he found himself tidying up more than usual. Vanessa noticed. "You're actually cleaning. This must be serious." Jaden shot her a look. "Shut up," she smirked, leaning against the kitchen counter. "You nervous?" Jaden hesitated before shrugging. "I don't know." It just feels different. He's never been in my space before. Vanessa nodded. Makes sense. It's one thing to meet in public, but this is personal. Jayden didn't respond, but her words stuck with him. At exactly 3 p.m., a knock sounded at the door. Jayden exhaled sharply before opening it. Benjamin stood there, dressed casually in jeans and a button-down. He looked almost hesitant, as if unsure whether he was really welcome. "Hey," he said. Jayden stepped aside. "Come in." Benjamin entered slowly, taking in the space. "Nice place," he said genuinely. Jayden shut the door behind him. "Thanks." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Benjamin spotted a framed photo on the shelf, one of Jayden and his mother from years ago. His expression softened. "She'd be proud of you, you know." Jayden swallowed. He wasn't sure why that hit so hard. "Yeah," he said quietly. Benjamin turned to him. "I know I've missed a lot, but I want to be part of your life, Jayden, however you'll have me." Jayden met his gaze, searching for any sign of hesitation, but there was none. And for the first time, Jayden thought, maybe Benjamin really meant it. "All right," he said. "Let's see how this goes." Benjamin smiled, small but real. "I'd like that." And just like that, another wall between them began to crumble. Jayden hadn't expected things to feel normal so quickly. Having Benjamin in his apartment, sitting on his couch, drinking coffee like it was the most natural thing in the world, it was strange, but not in a bad way. Benjamin glanced around the living room, his gaze settling on a basketball resting in the corner. "You still play?" he asked. Jayden shrugged. "Sometimes. Just at the gym, though. Nothing serious." Benjamin nodded. "I remember when you used to carry that ball everywhere." Jayden let out a small laugh. "Yeah, well, things change." Benjamin hesitated before speaking again. "I know I missed a lot, Jayden, and I don't expect you to just forget that. But I want to understand who you are now." Jayden stared at him for a long moment. "You don't get to act like you care now," he said, his voice quieter than he expected. Benjamin exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "I know, but I do care. I always have." Jayden scoffed. "Really? You had a funny way of showing it." Benjamin didn't flinch. He just nodded. "You're right, I messed up, and I can't fix the past, but I'm here now." Jayden looked away, his jaw tightening. He wanted to believe him. He really did. But part of him still held on to the anger, the disappointment of growing up without a father. After a moment, Benjamin leaned forward. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, Jayden. Just a chance." Jayden ran a hand through his hair, letting out a slow breath. "I don't know if I can give you that." Benjamin nodded. "Then I'll wait. However long it takes." Jayden didn't respond right away. Instead, he looked at his father, the man he had hated for so long, yet somehow still wanted to know. "All right," Jayden finally said. "We'll see." It wasn't a promise, but it wasn't a rejection either. And for now, that was enough.